like Joker, right? And here we go. I hate to be the one to break it to you, but there's something interesting going on in the margins of the King James Bible. Is Lucifer in Isaiah 14:12? Is it Satan? Is it the king of Babylon? Is it the Antichrist? Is it a fallen angel? Is it Jesus Christ? Is it the star that falls from heaven in Revelation? What or who is it? And how do King James only arguments that surround this controversy, how do they fall short? It's probably not going to come as a surprise to you if you've watched anything by us so far, but there is in fact a conspiracy behind the modern Bible translation controversy, which is undermining Christianity and our civilization at this very moment. My name is Joseph Armstrong, and welcome to the Bible Version Conspiracy. We're building a video library here on YouTube, and it's going to not only seek to expose the controversy, which we believe is behind both sides of the modern Bible translation debate. Not only is it going to expose that conspiracy, it also is going to seek to answer the tough questions about Bible history, the inerrancy of the King James Bible, and its supernatural character. Care to join us? If you want to become a co-conspirator, there's some special perks involved. You can check it out. You can check out all of the perks. You can check out the members program, which is $7 a month, down in the description, or you can visit our website, BibleVersionConspiracy.com. It is our co-conspirators who make all of this content that we create on this channel and on our website. It is them that make it all possible. You guys know who you are. Thank you for being awesome. Stick around to the end of tonight's video, because tonight's topic is going to keep getting stranger and stranger as we explore the name Lucifer. In Greek, I obviously don't know how to pronounce it, but in the Greek Septuagint, the name Lucifer, literally translated, bringer of dawn. So you ask your wife to, when she's out, pick up some dish soap. Call her Lucifer when she gets home, because she brought the dawn. Boom. Psst. In the Greek New Testament, the word that is translated in the LXX, which would be your Septuagint, which is a Greek translation of the Hebrew Old Testament, that word is not used in the Greek New Testament. So the word that is used in Isaiah 14:12 is a word that is specifically reserved for Isaiah. There is a time in, I believe, possibly one of the Peters, and then there's also Revelation 22, where it talks about Christ being the bright and morning star, the day star, arise in your heart, things like this in the New Testament. Those terms that are used are not the same as in the Greek LXX. So as far as morning star or day star being a proper name applying to both Satan and Christ, you guys can forget about what was his name. Jordan Maxwell, you can forget about him saying, oh, Jesus said that he was Lucifer. Not true. In the Vulgate, which would be the Latin translation of the Hebrew Old Testament, I believe, and Greek New Testament. Light bringer is the literal Latin translation. Lucifer. So basically transfer. So you are transporting. You are bringing something from one place to another. A light bringer or a light bearer is going to be somebody that trundles along with a bunch of light in a basket and plops it down and says, here you go. This Latin word does not appear in the Latin Vulgate New Testament, including Revelation 22:16. So that's an important note to make, because there are New Agers who teach that Christ and Lucifer are the same. There are young Christians who have gotten confused, thinking that Isaiah 14:12 is talking about Jesus Christ, because somebody comes from heaven to earth and is scoffed at, is cut down to the ground, and that's about where the similarity stops. If you actually read the entire passage, it is obvious it's not talking about Jesus Christ. I did a brief Google search this afternoon, trying to see if there was anybody today that is, a big name that teaches that Lucifer or the day star or the morning star in Isaiah 14:12 is Christ, and I found nothing. Not saying that there are some Bible dictionaries out there that do, because if I remember correctly, I have seen a couple that do. They are going to be in the minority. In Isaiah 14, is Lucifer referring to the king of Babylon, the planet Venus, Satan, a fallen angel, a prophecy of the Antichrist, the king of mystery Babylon in Revelation, or Jesus Christ, who was from heaven, derided by men, and cut down to the ground? Personally, after all of my minutes of research, I believe that Lucifer, referred to in Revelation 14, is either referring prophetically to the Antichrist or referring in hindsight to Satan, or comparing the king of Babylon to the planet Venus, or or a fallen angel who was not Satan that also rebelled against God. The reason why I think that it could just be, it is obviously just the king of Babylon at the time being referred to in the passage. However, he did not actually fall from heaven. Prophetically speaking, he doesn't have to have literally fallen from heaven. Sometimes language is just like that. Prophecies, a lot of the time, have hyperbole and metaphors that aren't strictly literal. However, if Christ is referring back to Isaiah 14:12, when he talks about having seen Satan fall as lightning from heaven, then that would strongly tie in with the passage in Ezekiel, I forget which chapter it is, and also Isaiah 14. The planet Venus is often called the morning star because it is, if I remember correctly, it is the last star or heaven celestial body that's going to be bright, that is visible as the morning dawns. So it would be traditionally referred to as Lucifer, light bringer, or day star or morning star. Many times we call people this if they are heading up a movement, such as John Wycliffe. John Wycliffe was called the morning star of the Reformation because he came so early that he he brought the light in, the light of the Word of God, to where it was able to start taking root, and the light slowly started to turn on, and the creatures slowly started to recede back into their holes in the dirt, i.e., the 7 hills of Mystery Babylon. So the planet Venus, I believe, is being referenced when we hear the terms day star or morning star. I do not believe that they are proper names. It does not seem that they are proper names at all. We will see them, I believe in modern versions, sometimes they will be capitalized as a kind of a title, or as we'll see in a while, in the King James Bible margin, they capitalized the D in or day star. We'll get to that in a little bit. It could be referring to the Antichrist as king of future Babylon, future mystery Babylon, and it kind of makes sense when you read the passage that it would be referring to him, but it may be more or less likely than it being Satan himself. Jesus is out of the question. Absolutely out of the question. We will read the passage in a little bit, and you guys will see just how obviously it is out of the question. I believe that it could possibly be a fallen angel that fell besides Lucifer, because in the occult, Lucifer and Satan are considered to be 2 different beings. And Baal is one of Lucifer's several generals, or one of Satan's several generals, and I think Lucifer is, a part of that whole ensemble of fallen angels, and is not actually Satan himself. It is unclear to me, because of a lot of the sermons that I've heard, that Satan used to be called Lucifer, and then he ended up, falling, and now he's Satan. So it's hard to really tell, because it's not something that our eyes really penetrate into. But with the Bible as our guide, I think that there's a lot that can be figured out about this controversy. Are modern versions leading us to worship Lucifer in their footnotes? That would be bad. That would be bad. The reason why it is thought that this is the case is because of footnotes in, say, an NIV or what have you. And they will oftentimes lead you from Isaiah 14:12 to the passage I mentioned in Peter. I forget the exact reference. I believe it's in Peter, one of the Peters, and Revelation 22. There could be a conspiracy there. There could be, with the footnote thing. But the problem is when we get dogmatic and we say, absolutely not. Daystar, the translation Daystar makes absolutely no sense. Get rid of it. Forget about it. It's heresy. Especially when I show you what I'm going to show you. Where did the term Lucifer come from? Apparently, it came from the Latin term that was used in Jerome's Latin Vulgate at the passage. Is the modern rendering of Hillel as day star trying to make Lucifer Jesus Christ? Let me show you what I mean. 20th century versions have removed the name Lucifer, thereby eliminating the only reference to him in the entire Bible. The word Lucifer then falls into the realm of poets and writers of mythology. Now, here's something that Gail Riplinger, I don't... The change in new versions does not spring from the original Hebrew language, but from the theology of the new version editors. Okay, so what is the theology of the modern version editors supposed to be? The NIV's wording parallels exactly the view expressed by NAV committee member R. Laird Harris. He asserts that Isaiah 14 is not about Lucifer and his descent to hell, but a king from Babylon and his internment in the grave. By the way, that's exactly, look it up. The Matthew Henry commentary. I didn't get enough time to find the other commentaries. I wanted to find the one by Chrysostom and a few other different scholarly people from, yesteryear, and other such references. But it looks like Matthew Henry makes absolutely no allusion to this being Satan whatsoever. He talks about it being the king of Babylon, but of course I realized he was amillennial, so the prophecy thing was a little bit out of his reach. So, but he talks about it being king of Babylon. Nothing more. So if he translated a Bible, do you think that he criticized the translation Lucifer? Didn't look like it. There may be a comparison being made between the fall of this king and what was going on with Satan and him falling and him having been, you were exalted and you were great and everything, but look at you now. And it's people mocking him. We'll read that in a minute. The NIV's version of Harris's view is one link in a chain tied to Lucifer, a chain tie to New Age Luciferian H.P. Blavatsky, who, like the New Version and New Theologian, denies the fall of Lucifer. I don't think that denying this passage refers specifically to Satan or to Lucifer. I don't think that that is necessarily denying that Satan fell. An examination of the original Hebrew will dispel any illusion that morning star is an acceptable substitute for the word Lucifer. The Hebrew is Hallel ben Shakar, which is accurately translated Lucifer, son of the morning. In the NIV, ESV, and NASB, give an English translation as if the Hebrew said Shakar, Kokab ben Shakar, so basically just inserting the word Kokab there for star, or morning star, or day star, son of the dawn, or morning, or dawn. So basically it would be completely redundant. So it would be, morning star, son of the morning. That's so strange. Yet the word for star, Kokabu, does not appear in the text, despite its use in the HCSB and all new versions, including the NKJV footnote. Also, morning, day, or dawn appears only once in the as the KJV shows, not twice as the new versions indicate. The word Kokab is translated as star dozens of other times by the NIV translators. Morning or dawn is likewise used hundreds of times. If God had intended to communicate morning star, he could have repeated it here. The word he chose, Hallel, appears nowhere else in the Old Testament, just as Lucifer appears nowhere else. Okay, got it. Problem. And not trying to be harsh on Gail. I am not. But the thing is that there is a marginal note that's worth checking out, in my opinion. I'm so glad that they only used black letter on the first edition of the King James. Oh my goodness. So here is the verse. My underline isn't cooperating. That's okay. I'll just circle it up. There we go. All right. How art thou fallen from heaven? They used you in the word heaven because you used to have a V sound. W, if you look at some of the books from this time period, they spelled world VVORLD because the W is literally a double V, but it would have been pronounced as a V. Oh, Lucifer, son, you have an F there for your S. S's, regular S's are also used, of course, such as, let's see, nations, right there. There's an S in its regular state. And here's an interesting spelling of didst, D-I-D-D-E-T-T. Standardized spelling was not a thing back then. You can also see over here, in the KJV 1611 printing, it says S-T-A-R-R-E. This one has S-T-A-R, and that F obviously is your S, and then T-A-R. Let's focus on the important part. This right here. A YouTube commenter commented on one of my YouTube videos and was like, dude, why do you say that Lucifer could not be translated as Daystar? And I was like, I don't remember saying that, but he's like, well, you know, King James onlyist people say that a lot of the time. And he's like, how about this note in the King James where it has the translators using the word Daystar as another translation of the word Lucifer. Because Gail Riplinger's claim basically is that you can't have a star because it's not in the text. The thing is that Halil, or Halil, or however you want to pronounce it, Carlisle, whatever you want to say, Halil basically means, in my understanding, it means Venus or morning star. And that's how it was translated, is as Lucifer, because it would be called the light bringer. How art thou fallen from heaven? Because it's talking about something that's up like that. Son of the morning, how art thou cut down to the ground, which dost weaken the nations? And here it's drawing an analogy for cut down to the ground. Here's something we kind of gloss over when we read this verse. It's talking about a king being killed in battle. He's cut down to the ground, which does weaken the nations. And before he had fallen from heaven. Thou hast said in thine heart, I will ascend into heaven, I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will sit also in the mountain of the congregation on the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Yet shalt thou be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. That sounds... Hang on, that's terrible. This sounds very much like Satan to me. When it talks about him exalting himself like that. But remember, we're also listening to a proverb which may be set to music that is talking about a man whom could easily be the Antichrist because he's exalting his throne above the stars of God, or at least he thinks he will. He says, I will, I will. And we know that the Antichrist proclaims himself to be God when the abomination of desolation comes along. So, all of that to say, let's read this and show you how it is not Satan. And I think it would be much more interesting to read it from here, don't you? God's merciful something of something, their triumphant something over Babel. 14, God's purpose against Assyria and Palestina. Something. Anyways. It's a little globby looking. For the Lord will have mercy, there's that you again, mercy on Jacob, and will yet choose Israel, and set them in their own land, and the strangers shall be joined with them. I believe that's your J right there. It looks kind of like an I, though, doesn't it? I's, J's, and Y's. I believe they all basically just evolved from the letter I, if I'm not mistaken. And they shall cleave to the house of the Lord. Took a second with that U. Here, let's just read it from my regular Bible. All right. For the Lord will have mercy on Jacob, and will yet choose Israel, and set them in their own land. And the strangers shall be joined with them, and they shall cleave to the house of Jacob. The strangers, I wonder if that's the Gentiles. And the people shall take them and bring them to their place, and the house of Israel shall possess them in the land of the Lord, in the land of the Lord for servants and handmaids, and they shall take them captives whose captives they were, and they shall rule over their oppressors. And it shall come to pass in that day, in the day that the Lord shall give thee rest from thy sorrow, and from thy fear, and from the hard bondage wherein thou wast made to serve, that thou shalt take up this proverb against the king of Babylon, and say, now songs can speak and say things, and proverbs are often poetic. How hath the oppressor ceased, the golden city, El Dorado, right? Of course, El Dorado probably meant man of gold, but I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure that there was actually a golden city, or more than that, out actually in America. There's actually a lot that's being discovered, and this is not a ancient America thing right now. We'll talk about that at some other point. The Lord hath broken the staff of the wicked and the scepter of the rulers. He who smote the people in wrath with a continual stroke, he that ruled the nations with anger is persecuted, and none hindereth. Smote the people, ruled the nations in anger. We're talking about a man. We're not necessarily talking about Satan, but, it's applicable. Because, the whole earth lieth in wickedness, and, all this power I'll give thee if you fall down and worship me. That's the promise of the devil. So, you see leaders that are Satanists, don't be surprised. Or even a werewolf, or whatever. Well, not necessarily. Basically a werewolf. Because apparently we've had one president who was. I'm not sure which president that was, but the whole earth is at rest and is quiet. They break forth into singing. I don't know why, I just underlined that. Yea, the fir trees rejoice at thee. So we're talking figurative here, okay? It's kind of obvious. And the cedars of Lebanon, saying, since thou art laid down, no feller has come up against us. Hell from beneath is moved for thee to meet thee at thy coming. It stirreth up the dead for thee, even all the chief ones of the earth. It hath raised up from their thrones all the kings of the nations. All they shall speak and say unto thee, art thou become weak as we? Art thou become like unto us? Thy pomp is brought down to the grave. The grave. Okay, Gail? It literally is talking about a king going down to the grave, okay? There's no denying it. But it could also be talking about Satan, and it could also be talking about the Antichrist. It's applicable to all three of them. And the noise of thy vials. Remember the noise of the vials from Ezekiel 28? The worm is spread under thee, the worms cover thee. How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? Given what we've just read, it does not actually seem very likely that this is talking. I don't know what this line is doing. It's not behaving is what it's doing. Go away, line. Go away. How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? Cut down. Down. We're talking about first an exalted, bright person, being, whatever. Remember this, okay? In the Old Testament, I believe it's Nebuchadnezzar is referred to as a king of kings. In the New Testament, Christ is referred to as the King of Kings. We're talking about somebody that God put in great authority. Nebuchadnezzar was a dude and he blew it. Dudes, men, we always blow it seems. Christ was the second King of Kings. He was the second morning star, son of the morning. And he didn't blow it. First Adam blew it, second Adam didn't. Here, the king of Babylon is being compared to, O Lucifer, son of the morning. How art thou cut down to the ground which didst weaken the nations? For thou hast said in thine heart, and here's I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. Above the stars. Ascend into heaven. I will sit upon the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Those are the 5 I wills of Satan. As this applies to Satan, if it does, this guy may not have even said this. In reality, he may have. But remember, this is a taunt. This is a proverb. This is very specifically a proverb and a taunt. A lot of other prophecies and things aren't this way. There are some other ones. Yet shalt thou be brought down to hell, to the sides of the pit. Instead of being in the mount of the congregation in the sides of the north, he's going to be in the sides of the pit. So basically, if you're in the sides of the north, you're either talking about being in here in the sides of the north, or if you're in a pit, you're talking about being here, where the sides meet. I'm pretty sure that you could also be on top and also be considered on the sides. I'm not positive. Haven't done a deep dive on that yet. They that see thee shall narrowly look upon thee and consider thee, saying, Is this the man that made the earth to tremble, that did shake kingdoms, that made the world as a wilderness, and destroyed the cities thereof, that opened not the house of his prisoners? And that's what Nebuchadnezzar did too. All the kings of the earth, even all of them, lie in glory, everyone in his own house. But thou art cast out of thy grave like an abominable branch. Remember how Christ is called the branch in the peaceable kingdom passage in Isaiah 11, I believe it is. And this guy's an abominable branch. Sounds like the Antichrist. And as a remnant of those that are slain, thrust through with the sword, that go down to the stones of the pit, as a carcass trodden under feet. Now, this is the article that I mentioned from kjvtoday.com. And this is the entire link that you guys can go to actually access this article, or you can download the entire PDF library and our digital assets at our Buy Me a Coffee page. So if you guys want to check this out, that is totally up to you. If you want to pause it and read the first page just to whet your appetite, then you're more than welcome to. For now, however, I would like to focus on something a little bit different. Let's see how Gail Riplinger responded. There we go. All right. Hello, Gail. Hope you and your family are doing well and had a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year. You are in our thoughts and prayers. I am reaching out because someone commented on a video of mine regarding a question I feel is important to get your input on. The commenter criticizes KJV-only beliefs for claiming that modern translations of the KJV's Lucifer as Morning Star or Day Star probably should be New Age translations, when the KJV 1611 itself adds a marginal note to Isaiah 14:12 saying, or day star. I've included a screen capture of the 1612 printing from Google Books. This marginal note also receives no acknowledgement in New Age Bible versions that I could find. Please let me know what you think of this whenever you feel up to it and have a spare moment. If not, could you please ask Bryn if she could take a look at this? Your feedback is always appreciated. Thank you. And here is the screen capture. Thy pomp is brought down to the ground, or to the grave, and the noise of thy viols, the worm is spread under thee, and the worms cover thee. How art thou fallen from heaven? And then there's your note. O Lucifer, son of the morning, how art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations. Here's Gail's response right here. New Age Bible Versions covers the Hebrew text in chapter 22, page 44-45 in the 2022 edition. Day star comes from Roman mythology. Okay. A definition of a word is wrongly taken from the culture. If the Romans taught that Lucifer was the day star, that definition would still occur in dictionaries, since those who believe that they are part of the culture. The Oxford English Dictionary, for example, shows usage, giving many citations of a word in context. A word means only what its context communicates. Real linguists do not define words. For example, the Brown University corpus of the English language just shows dozens of words before and dozens after. Period. No definition. Hugh Hefner will use the word love in a different way from your lovely Christian wife. But both usages exist in the culture. Regarding Isaiah, I showed the word-for-word translation of the Hebrew text. That's what the KJV translators use in their text. Their margin merely shows more cultural usages. Okay. That's interesting that she says that the word Lucifer is a Roman, from Roman mythology, because they would have been using Latin. So that's where she traces the word Lucifer back to. And if it's used synonymously with day star, I think it's actually very likely that if there is a conspiracy involved with this whole thing, if there's some doctrine that's being incorporated or what have you, that it may actually be connected to Mary. Thank you. Obviously, you do not believe the margin is the correct translation. If you could go back, do you think it would have been beneficial to acknowledge the marginal note given by the translators in New Age Bible versions? Is this similar to their use of whirlpool in the margin of Job 1:1? So, if you look at Job 1:1, it's talking about Leviathan, and it mentions Leviathan. Let me read you the handy-dandy little note that they included there. Draw out Leviathan with an hook, or his tongue with a cord which thou lettest down. And they put, just before Leviathan, that's where they would insert their note, they put, this is a whale or a whirlpool. And where it says, which thou lettest down, they said the Hebrew, which thou drownest. So basically, you're drowning a cord by putting it down in the water, I believe is the interpretation of that. But the thing is about it being a whirlpool, whirlpools don't have teeth and they don't breathe fire. And neither does a classical whale. Well, not a classical whale. Neither does a typical run-of-the-mill whale like you and I would think of. But in 1611, a whale also meant a sea monster. You can see their depictions of whales at the time on various maps and such. So when it comes to Gail saying that it's giving more cultural context, it's interesting because if they're talking Roman, they're talking Latin. The term Lucifer is Latin, yes. But if they're putting Daystar in there as another accurate translation, or as a cultural whatever the heck you want to say it is, of the Hebrew text, then that shows that Daystar and Lucifer are just pretty much synonymous, and they're accurate translations of each other. I don't see how removing Lucifer from New Bible versions is somehow denying the existence of Satan. But remember New Order barbarians. Remember that. Because it's supposed to be the revision. It's supposed to be the augmentation of keywords that is bringing in the New World religion into the Bible. And I would say that Lucifer is a keyword. Gail actually cautions, rightfully so, on some KJV reprints, some 1611 reprints that do have some things that are off. There's more to this than meets the eye. David was the one who pointed this out to me. Below are some KJV marginal notes. You can find Genesis 2:6 note there. Let's look it up. All right. The reason I wanted to bring light on this note is because it seems Gail suggests that, at least in the case of Isaiah 14:12, the or Daystar reading is just due to cultural differences. That seems like a very misunderstood interpretation. I say this because if you see the Genesis 2:6 note below, I doubt Gail would read the or and the alternate reading as being different due to cultural differences, but as a true yet different but still accurate reading. And that's the same thing with Job. It's not a cultural thing. It's just I'm sorry. I'm going to say it. It just seems to be a cultural thing when it's convenient. It's the same thing with all sorts of things in the Bible. Oh, that was culture, like women's hair being long in what is it, 1 Corinthians 11? I don't remember. But yeah, different things like that. It's just culture. So Genesis 2:6. But there went up a mist from the earth that watered the whole face of the ground. Now the note is inserted at the beginning of the verse, and it says, or a mist which went from hang on. Or a mist which went up from, etc. So there went a mist which went up from. So just basically a different, not a different translation of it that could have been used in the text, but you know, it's this way or it's this way. It's been translated both ways, you know, something like that. And that would actually be very interesting to me to check out the older English translations of that phrase, Daystar, to see if that actually works its way into any English translations before the King James Bible. It seems selective to say that or readings in the margin is due to cultural differences, or maybe she only believes this in the case of Isaiah 14:12. If so, can she show this? In other words, can she prove that it is a cultural thing? Just like the marginal note that we have Hebrew and another reading. This is where the KJV translators show more literal renderings in the margin. Yes, because they're going to show either more literal meanings, or just like, you know, it can also be read this way, so you can look at it from this perspective as well, so you can be like, oh, okay, and it can aid you in your understanding of the Bible. But of course, the one that they include in the text is going to be the one that's going to work best with the text, be best understood in English, and be more accurate. Compare now, also, accuracy, and it's understood by a reader, is not always a direct literal translation. So when they're showing a lot of the time in the margin, they're showing a more literal translation, which may be more stilted, more awkward, not be as friendly to you know, our usage. This is where the KJV translators show a little more a more literal rendering in the margin compared to what they put in the main body of text. I wonder what kind of interpretation she has of those. I did too. I wondered very much what interpretation she had of those. Because it's like Gail. And he includes several notes. He's got 2 men shall be in the field, the one shall be taken, and the other left. 2 lines right here. That's an insertion of a note. That's over here. This, in 36, verse is wanting in most Greek copies. And that is true. Textually, they believed it to be sound, it seems, because they left it in. They may have left it in there because of the bishop's Bible having it. They may have left it in there because of long-standing tradition of the acceptance of the verse or Erasmus's text. It's there. And so far, I believe that it should be there, and there's good textual reason for it being there. I just don't remember what it is, because it's been a while since I've read the articles and things. I'm pretty sure there'll be one in there for KJV today, if you want to check it out. Let's see. And by the way, for the Mandalites, 2 women shall be grinding together. The one shall be taken and the other left. Look at the cross-reference, okay? Look at the cross-reference in the other Gospels. Grinding does not mean what it means in your sick mind. It means making flour at a mill with grain. Mandalites. Fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning. That's what it looks like in the black letter type. And I wish I had a capital H right here that I could show you guys, because Gail, or not Gail, Cat Martin makes a huge deal. Here we go. Look at that. There's an H. How art thou fallen? Okay, so let me explain something to you, Cat Martin. Just because an H, a capital H in black letter, looks a little bit like your lowercase h because it has a shaft here and a little arc there with a little foot that comes down here, kind of like a lowercase h, does not mean that it's a lowercase h when you find it on a Holy Bible cover, okay? It's called black letter and like Gothic type, and often, very often, the H looks like this when it's capitalized, and the lowercase h looks like this. So stop telling your people, stop displaying your ignorance of fonts to your followers on your EYA Supernatural Bible Changes YouTube channel. Stop spreading garbage and start focusing on the truth. And by the way, your experiences are valid, but I don't think it's the Mandela effect causing them. We'll talk later. All right, so I sent this by David on to Gail. Here's my email. Here's what the commenter replied. I think he has a point. How do we know which are merely to give cultural context and which they thought were valid alternatives? Thank you. I just forwarded your email to Gail. I think you make a good point. Thank you and God bless. And I sent that back to David. Gail responded, 3 points. Okay, so here's the first point right here. All scripture is given by inspiration of God. And when I read that, I was just like, yes, and all scripture is given by inspiration of God. This clearly states that no statement outside of scripture is given by inspiration. No, it doesn't. Because depending on what inspiration means, it could just be anytime God says something. And I'm pretty sure that God has said things like 7 thunders uttered their voices and it wasn't recorded. Was that inspired? If that was God speaking, the 7 spirits of God before his throne. Always use the sword to defend the Bible. Verses should be the main verbiage used, period. Got it. Nobody is criticizing the King James Bible's reading. We are criticizing the idea that the King James translators thought that Lucifer was the only valid translation and that they didn't think that it could be translated as Daystar. Because that is the idea that is put forward in New Age Bible versions, and it does not seem to be correct. So clearly the calendars, introduction, translators to the readers, the epistle dedicatory, or any other of the scripture, or anything other than the scripture is simply human. We see through a glass darkly. This includes the notes, which we scarcely carried forward to the world to see throughout the centuries. Few writings of men last more than a century or 2 in widespread use, and the notes would be included. The marginal input is not scripture, therefore worth no more than any of the books the translators wrote outside the scriptures. You're still telling us that you're sure of the King James Bible's translations. And it seems like the King James translators did too, or they wouldn't have put Lucifer in the main text. They put Daystar in the margin because it looks like they thought that they could translate Hillel as Daystar because Daystar was a synonym for what Lucifer is referring to. It's not a title. It's not saying that Lucifer and Jesus Christ are the same thing. It's merely saying that a Daystar is somebody that is, up high and bright in the sky and comes at the beginning of the morning and scatters darkness. And then it's just saying basically, how have you fallen? Ay, ay, ay. Faceplant. Wipe out. The translators wrote in the translators to the readers exactly what they thought of their notes. That is close as one gets to the why they put the words on the margin. Look it up in the original. Likely archive.org has it. I won't quote it from memory. Seeing what they wrote is using primary sources. My opinion is meaningless. Be careful to read an original. The later typeset copies have been altered. Again, their thoughts in the translators to the readers are no more inspired than a list of ingredients on a can of soup. I would like to see that in the translators to the readers, and at some point we will go through the entire translators to the readers on this channel. Jesus responded to many comments, but he didn't necessarily answer the question that was asked. Such questions are called diversion in formal debate. The question in itself shows they don't have an answer to the real issues. Now, here is the real issue at this point in time. The real issue at this point of time is Daystar or Morning Star based on the occult philosophy of Bible translators, or is it a valid alternative translation of the original Hebrew word? That is the question. Gail Riplinger says that apparently it is because of the New Agey influence that has crept into translators' minds. The King James translators, on the other hand, seem to be saying things a little bit differently. They seem to think that Daystar was a perfectly good translation. And by the way, I am going to continue to endorse Gail's book. I still consider her a friend. I am not wanting to get on the naughty list or what have you. I am merely pointing out what I feel to be an inconsistency. If there is an inconsistency and an error, if there is a comment or criticism or something else like this that shows some real hard evidence that shows otherwise, I will be glad to hear it. All right. Those who point to who, what, where, when, and why are using diversionary tactics. Do not let critics draw you on their wrestling mat. Stay on the offensive. Remember Dagon. His hands fell off, and he fell over when he was placed next to the holy, powerful words of God in the ark. Critics will try to take you away from the ark, outside and under the tree of knowledge. Instead, say, I'll answer your question when you tell me why you would give the okay to a Bible that ripped your Savior's name out of Ephesians 3:9 and 3:14. The average person does not know about the omissions in new Bibles. The problem is with that is that when I make a mistake and I say that translating Lucifer, or thinking that you could add the word star in when you're talking about Hallel, and making it be adding the word day and adding the word star, and making a single word Hallel, which apparently means day star, or Lucifer, and Lucifer, which means day star, and day star, which means Lucifer, and day star, which means Hallel. When I make a mistake and I say that a modern version translator is infiltrated by New Agey Illuminati philosophy, therefore they translated it Daystar instead of Lucifer. When I say that, and then my favorite translators in the world, the King James translators, say that it can be translated Daystar, when that happens, I'm sorry, I don't go, oh, before I give in to you and say that you might be right and that I might be wrong, because that is the actual problem here. He's not questioning the translation of Lucifer. He is questioning the idea that translating it Daystar, hang on. He's questioning the idea that translating it as Daystar is occult, is wicked. That's what he's questioning. He's not saying, oh, Lucifer, it shouldn't be translated Lucifer or something like this. And when I make that mistake, I'm not about to go saying, "Oh, wow, before I say anything to you, how can you possibly want a Bible that has 15 less verses in it?" Because that's dodging the question. And if I'm prepared to say that modern translators have been influenced with New Age philosophy, if I'm prepared to say that, I'd better be prepared to defend it. It is our job to hammer on those. There are thousands of examples. That's actually kind of also what Cat Martin says about the Mandela effect. There's thousands, there's millions of examples, and it's like, yeah, the deluge of delusion. It would take a lifetime to expound them all. The devil will keep you busy talking the rest of your life about diversionary things. Stay with the ark. Don't let them draw you under the tree of knowledge. And that was her reply.
Looking back on it now, I'm thinking that the reaction that she gave was to the notation on the two men being in the field and it not being in the majority of manuscripts. So it's a little bit more understandable, her reaction. Not that she was necessarily dodging the question. To me, at that point in time, and still now, the major point is whether or not her claims made in New Age Bible versions regarding the translation Day Star or Morning Star relating to Lucifer is of some sort of New Age influence. But it seems like the introduction of the other marginal note photographs in there may have made her attention go elsewhere. So I may have misunderstood that. I double-checked the older translations, Wycliffe, Coverdale, Bishops. Apparently they all say Lucifer in that passage, and modernly English translations, including newer Catholic editions, like I believe the New Jerusalem, change it to Morning Star and Day Star. So there's probably something going on. I wouldn't doubt it. But do I have to say that the theology of the translators is what is causing them to translate Hillel as Lucifer? No. Especially since I believe it was Webster's 1828. You look up the word Lucifer. First definition is Venus. So, do you think that the translation in the King James Bible as Lucifer being different in modern translations and now being Day Star or Morning Star, do you think that it is of a New Age kind of influence? Do you think it's a New Order barbarian thing where keywords are being shifted toward the teachings of the New World religion? Or do you think it's perfectly benign and completely responsible of new translators to translate it that way? So, leave your answers down in the comments. I'm looking forward to hearing your insights and your opinions. I'm not quite sure, and this will be more stuff that'll come down eventually. I think there's a lot more to the story as far as how it plays into Mariolatry and how the Catholics actually call Mary Lucifer. There's a whole nother aspect to this that we haven't even gotten into. But until then, you've got to read your King James Bible like the devil's after it. Because it truly is a Bible version conspiracy. Have a good night. We'll talk soon.